Good morning, or depending when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so I've made a podcast all about the Pokémon trading card game. And you're listening to PTCG Radio. Now, this week we are going to talk about this new Night March deck. I have spent quite a large portion of the last week talking about this lovely Night March deck, and, you know, testing it and all of that good stuff, so I thought it would only be fair to share my results on this particular podcast with you lovely people listening. Not only that, but we're going to be talking about some pretty gosh darn interesting cards which have been spoiled in the last few days, and I'm going to share with you some miscellaneous testing notes I found. I've been playing around with the new cards, against the new cards, and I'm not going to go into a lot of this in huge detail, but just some kind of, shall we say, some little notes, just a few little things that I've noticed playing around, which I can share with you lovely people. You're welcome. So the first thing, we really need to start here this week, is the news. Now, there have been a few little bits of news here and there, but really the only bit of news worth talking about is, I've mentioned before how we're going to be getting boxes with jumbo versions of Primal Kyorge EX and Primal Groudon EX. And these have been spoiled. We have seen pictures of these in English, as it happens, so we know exactly what they do. Now, I was just going to run through these, but the inevitable question is, what do the non-Primal reversion ones do? Which is a fair point, so I'm going to give you a quick reminder of them as well. It appears that these follow the same mechanic as Mega EXs. They still give up 2 prizes when they're KO'd. Your turn still ends if you evolve into them. Now, there is no word yet on any Spirit Link cards. If I had to give my guess, I would probably say not to expect Spirit Link cards. Mega EXs are a bit different to the Primal ones, and I could be wrong here. They may well do Spirit Links. If they do, that will be awesome. But I think when we're looking at these cards, we should go under the assumption that there won't be Spirit Link cards, or the equivalent thereof. And if it turns out there are Spirit Link cards, well, all the better, quite frankly. So, looking at it then, looking at Kyorge EX. Now, Kyorge EX on its own is, shall we say, a little bit unspectacular. It's got an attack for a water and a colourless, it does 30 damage and sleep. And for 2 water, 2 colourless, it does 140, and you get to return 2 water energy to your hand. Which is fine, and does combo quite nicely with Kyorge EX. Primal Kyorge EX. But what I love about Primal Kyorge EX is pretty much everything about it. Now, it does have a massive retreat cost of 4, and it does have a weakness to grass, but with 240 HP, then a Genesect will need a Muscle Band or a G-Booster in order to get a one-hit KO, and don't forget that you can use the Team Flare cards to attach a tool to Genesect, basically guaranteeing it's not going to get a one-hit KO against you. I.e., you can guarantee 2 hits with Primal Kyorge EX before your opponent can actually get a KO on you. And before we say anything about it, yes, I am entirely aware that there are cards which allow you to take tools off your Pokémon, which can be used to get rid of the Team Flare cards, but when was the last time you saw somebody playing these cards? Now, Primal Kyorge has an alpha growth, similar to the Omega Barrier we've talked about with the Groudon in recent weeks, when that was spoiled, or at least partly spoiled. Now, this is like an ability. It's at the top of the card, directly under the attack name, and so therefore it's not an ability, and it won't be shut off by Wobbuffet and Garbodor and all of that good stuff. And it reads, it's very badly worded, incidentally, but it reads like this. When you attach an energy card from your hand to this Pokémon, except with an attack, ability, or trainer card, you may attach 2 energy cards. Now, what it basically means is you may attach 2 energy cards instead, or when you attach an energy, you may attach an extra energy. I've spoken to a judge friend of mine who judges in Masters at Worlds and all of that, and she has told me that it almost certainly means that. It doesn't mean you can attach 2 extra energy cards when you attach the first one, but it's very clumsily worded. All they needed to say was write either 2 instead or an additional card, and that would have solved the problem. So I'm not a fan of the wording on this. It's very clumsily worded. But take away from all of that, how good is that? we've all know, if you've been playing the game for a while, some of you people might be new, in which case, hello, welcome to the game. And send me an email, ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk. Tell me about yourself, how did you get into the game, all that good stuff. If you are not new to the game, however, you will realise the importance of energy acceleration, attaching more than one energy per turn. This allows you to attach 2 energy per turn, which is quite fantastic. But it needs to have a good attack, and good golly it does. Now, Tidal Storm is the attack, and it carries on Pokemon's obsession with 150. These are the 2 numbers that Pokemon like to hit, 120 and 150. But we all know that all you need to do is stick a muscle band on this and it goes up to 170, which will one-hit KO almost every EX. If you really want to one-hit everything, all you need is a hypnotoxic laser. Now, it will mean that you basically can't KO Virizion as a water-resistant Pokemon, which also can't be affected by special conditions, but outside of that, you're off the hook, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll see why that doesn't really matter in a minute. 150 damage. Now, it does take 4 energy, but, as previously mentioned, you can attach 2 per turn. That is very, very good. And the attack has 2 extra effects, and both of them are superb. Effect number 1, move 2 energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon. Now, that is not an optional thing, so you have to move the energy, but it means that if Kyogre gets KO'd, you've got something else set up on the bench. And let's not forget, you may be moving 2 energy to the bench, but you can then attach 2 from your hand the following turn. And it does 30 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon EX. That is phenomenal. It's just wonderful, it's just amazing. 150 damage plus 30 spread to each opposing EX, plus moving 2 energy to your bench to conserve energy in case Kyogre gets KO'd, plus 150 damage, which with a muscle band is enough to KO any opposing Pokemon, other than, you know, a couple of 180 HP EXs, like we said, you can use Hypnotoxic Laser, plus double attaching per turn. That is a fantastic... This is what I was expecting. When we heard about this Mega EX mechanic, the fact that you would have to end your turn in order to evolve, I was expecting Pokemon this good. One-hit KOs plus other effects, plus cool abilities. This is what I was looking for, and this is what we're getting, ladies and gentlemen. It is spectacular and brilliant. Now, it's easily countered, of course. You can run grass Pokemon, even something like... the Tropius, which has got energy press, is going to be doing, 200 damage. I believe that's correct. And if you put a muscle band, then Tropius will be actually one-hit KOing this. Yeah, there's going to be counters like there are for everything, but you can, run counters. You can run fire Pokemon with this. You only need to run, a free line of this. Now, there is the downside of Mega EXing, and this is why I kind of hope there isn't a Spirit Link for this card. This card is what I wanted from Mega EXs. An insanely powerful card with a good ability and a really good attack that you have to waste a turn in order to evolve, which gives your opponent a turn to Lysandra up and have a first hit, etc. Really, really cool Pokemon. I would personally play this with something like Manectric EX. Lead with Manectric EX and, use that to put energy onto Kyogre, and then just stream Kyogres until the end of the game. It's got 240 HP and you're conserving energy, so what you could always do is, move 2 energy to your bench Kyogre, switch to the bench Kyogre, max potion the Kyogre that's half dead, attach 2 from your hand, maybe use something like Energy Retrieval to get the 2 you just got rid of with Max Potion, and then you've got a brand new Kyogre EX. You can stream these in the same way people have been trying to stream the Dragonite EX from Furious Fist. You can stream these ones. Essentially, there's 4 energy on your Kyogre, you attack and put 2 energy to a second Kyogre, put that second Kyogre active, attach 2 energy from your hand, which you're allowed to do, and max potion to 1 on the bench to stop it being killed. Boom. Now, that's not going to work forever, because you're having to basically discard 2 energy every turn, but cards like Energy Retrieval stop that being so much of a problem. I like Primal Kyogre EX. The big question is whether there's going to be a Spirit Link, and we will have to wait to find out about that in future. I see this card seeing play. I see it as better than any of the Mega EXs we've seen so far. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's going to be pretty fun finding out. Now, the other Pokemon is Groudon, and quite frankly, it's not quite as spectacular, although I prefer Groudon to Kyogre. Sorry, Becky, if you're listening. But it's still a force to be reckoned with, shall we say. So, the regular Groudon, now it is grass weak, it's got 180 HP and a retreat cost of 4, exactly like Kyogre EX. It's got 2 attacks. For a fighting colourless, 30 damage, flip a coin, if heads, discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Kinda cool. And free fighting and a colourless, Super Cleave, 130 damage, Muscle Band, Hypnotoxic Laser, Verbank City Gym, 180 damage. So that alone is pretty good. It's overpriced, but let's not forget that in Furious Fists we were given the non-EX Landorus, which allows you to attach energy from your discard pile as well as doing 30 damage. Just like with the Evil Tal non-EX, just like with Thundurus EX's Raiden Knuckle attack. So, all this very good stuff. Moving swiftly on. What we see is a playable Pokemon that's very expensive. Use Landorus to get it going. What is the Mega EX doing? Well, we've got this Omega Barrier. I like the use of Greek letters, incidentally. I think it's kind of cool. And we know what this does. We've seen it before. Whenever your opponent plays a trainer card, prevent all effects of that card done to this Pokemon. Your opponent plays Enhanced Hammer to get rid of your strong energy. It does nothing. Your opponent plays a Hypnotoxic Laser to poison and put you to sleep. It does nothing. I could go on, but you get the idea here. My opponent plays an Escape Rope. I don't have to switch away Groudon because that's an effect done to Groudon. I think that's correct. Do correct me, of course, if I am wrong. It basically means all these cards that we play to screw our opponent over, the Team Flare item cards, don't work. So we got the Team Flare cards. We've got Hypnotoxic Laser, we've got Escape Rope, we've got Enhanced Hammer, Crushing Hammer. All of those cards no longer work on Primal Groudon EX. But it needs to have a good attack. And it's got one, and it's not quite as good as Kyogre's, but it's not to be messed with. 100 damage. If there's a stadium in play, this attack does 100 more damage, discard the stadium. 200 damage for 4 energy. 4 energy is a lot, but let's face it, Black Kyurem EX works pretty gosh darn well with 4 energy 200, and it has to discard them. This doesn't. Again, you need to get 4 energy on him, and that's going to be the really bad thing about this. Cards like Energy Switch and Scramble Switch will be your friend, but you're going to need stuff, again, like Manectric EX, Mega Manectric EX, or like the regular Landorus. 4 energy without... And the reason Kyogre gets away with a 4 energy is because of the built-in energy acceleration. Groudon doesn't have that. But what Groudon does have is support Pokemon that can allow it to get to that energy. You just need it not to die. And the fact, the Omega Barrier is going to help greatly in stopping your opponent getting rid of your energy, and stopping your opponent getting easier KOs with laser, blah, blah, blah. So all this is good stuff. How good it's going to be in the long run, I honestly don't know, ladies and gentlemen. But it's good for the time being, I think is fair to say. So that's Primal Groudon EX. He's pretty cool. Let's just leave it at that. And they are these Primal cards. They were only announced, they were released yesterday, spoiled yesterday on PokeBeach.com. Go over there if you want to go and see the pictures. But, they're pretty cool, and I think they warranted a bit of explanation at the beginning of this week's podcast. Speaking of PokeBeach.com, in a very clumsy segue, I have once again used their pictures for a new YouTube video. Thank you to them for that. By the time you listen to this, my new video should either be up on YouTube, or if you're listening very shortly after I post this, it will be up very shortly. I have decided to go for a new type of video. I'm doing a list. I have done a video of my top 10 cards of Phantom Forces, doing a countdown of the 10 cards which I think are going to have the most impact on the format. So get yourself over there, ladies and gentlemen. Go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/PTCGRadio, or just search PTCG Radio YouTube. You know how the internet works by now. You're listening to a podcast. So I would be surprised if you didn't know how the internet works. Get over there and find it, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's a good video. I certainly put a bunch of time and effort in making that list. Always let me know if you like my videos in the comments and all of that. And if there is a top 10 list you would like me to do, stick it in the comments of that video or tweet me at the Wassy. Now, speaking of Phantom Forces, I am now going to talk about this Night March deck, and I'm going to give you some testing insights I've seen. I've been looking at this set a lot over the past week, partly to do my top 10 list for my YouTube channel, partly to do my Phantom Forces rundown of all the relevant cards, which I've done over the course of the last 2 podcasts, and partly because with the first regional happening in Newport in Wales in the UK, the weekend after this one, in about a week and a half's time, I have been furiously testing to try and find a deck I can play. Weird Evil Town list, kind of working. Weird Lugia list, kind of working. Night March, actually working fairly well, but makes me too nervous to maybe consider playing it properly. New Flareon list, working fairly well. I have no idea what I'm playing. Any ideas? Tweet me, @TheWassy. Now, speaking of that Night March deck, this is a deck which, and I talked about it on my podcast last week when I looked at the non-EX Pokemon cards from Phantom Forces, and I never really gave it the time of day. But huge shout out to my lovely podcast listener Jason Lindsay. He has very, very kindly sent me a bunch of Phantom Forces codes, and I thank him very much for doing so, because he is an absolutely lovely man, and he sent me a bunch of Phantom Forces codes, and that has allowed me to get a bunch of Phantom Forces cards online. And what this has allowed me, if you want to follow him on Twitter, by the way, it's @BigBowler1037, BIGBOWLR, no E, 1037. So thank you to him. And by opening all of those packs, I managed to get all the cards for Night March, so I thought, let's go play with Night March. And I will be doing a deck breakdown of that deck as well on my YouTube channel, because it has been oft requested by listeners. So if you didn't learn about it enough last week on the podcast, when I only went over it briefly, we've got today's podcast, and we've got a deck breakdown. Today I'm going to be talking more about the deck generally. The deck breakdown is really going to be looking at a specific list and my card choices in that list. So listen to both together for all the information. So the deck revolves around 3 Pokemon. Lampent, Joltik, and Pumpkaboo. And that is something we don't really expect. These are not 3 Pokemon that everyone thinks, oh my god, they're superpowers. Joltik has 30 HP, which, as a quick side note, remember 30 HP, if you go second, just starting lone Joltik, your opponent can go Virbank, Hypnotoxic Laser, and that Joltik's going to die and you're going to lose. Even if you've got other Pokemon out, you could still end up a prize down, before you've even had a turn, so something to watch. And these all have the Night March attack, and the Night March attack does 20 damage times the amount of Pokemon in your discard pile that have the Night March attack. So and Joltik does it for a double colourless, Pumpkaboo does it for 3 colourless energy, but if you use the Dimension Valley Stadium card, that reduces it to a attack cost of just a double colourless, and Lampent does it for a Psychic and a double colourless. Again, Dimension Valley brings it down to a Psychic and a colourless, but that's 2 energy attachments on a stage 1 that you really want to be attacking with Pumpkaboo and Joltik. And when you look at my deck breakdown, I'll be explaining why I don't think you should even play Litwick, you should just play 4 Lampent. So, this is essentially what you do. You try and hammer all these Night March Pokemon into the discard pile, and then you attack for a double colourless energy, and the prize trade works in your favour. Now, let's, for argument's sake, say you can get away with 3 Night March attackers. That means you can put 9 in the discard pile, and you're doing 180 for a double colourless energy. That is spectacular. Of course, it does mean that at the most you've got 3 60 HP Pokemon with which to attack, and that's far from ideal. How do you get them in the discard? Well, there's the traditional ways. You can use Ultra Ball to discard them, you can use Juniper to discard them, but another card from Phantom Forces has come out to help us. This card called Battle Compressor, and that allows you to search your deck and discard 3 cards. So what I basically do is I don't play Litwick, and first I discard my Lampents, then I discard my Joltik, then I discard my Pumpkaboo. But you're attacking for a lot of damage very quickly. The other thing to note, of course, here is that Pumpkaboo is a Psychic Pokemon and Joltik is an Electric Pokemon, so you're hitting a variety of typings here. It means you can hit for weakness on Psychic weak Pokemon like Lucario, like Mewtwo, like Deoxys, as well as hitting for weakness on Lightning type Pokemon like Yveltal and like Lugia. So already, this is starting to look pretty good. It's already starting to look like a deck which we might want to consider investing just a little bit of playing time into. So, that's good, essentially. Starting off, we are happier with this. And it's very, very simple, and that is essentially all there is to the deck. Now, first, let's go over the good things, because there are a multitude of problems with this deck. So let's go through the good things first. Let's start off on a positive note. It can be very, very fast. All you really need is a battle compressor and an ultra ball, and you can be attacking for 100 damage on turn 1 for a double colourless energy. You're attacking with basic Pokemon, you're attacking for a single energy attachment, and cards like battle compressor allow you to get all this stuff into the discard pile very, very quickly. This is, far and away a very good thing about the deck. We also have type advantage. You've got psychic Pokemon. You've got psychic Pokemon that you're attacking with, and you've got electric Pokemon that you're attacking with, and this, again, helps you immensely. The other thing is we've got a lot of recovery here. And the thing that's good about, essentially, you sit there and you find yourself with no way to attack. You've got nothing to attack with. You can just stick down Joltik DCE, and all of a sudden you're attacking very, very quickly. So these are very, very good things. These are things which are going to help you quite quickly, and that's good. And it's a very simple deck. It kind of almost plays itself at times, although one thing I've found is that it's very easy to make mistakes. The other thing is there's a bit of space in this deck. So you need to find something to pair it with. Now, personally, I'm going to be pairing it with Flareon and Espeon. The reason is, Flareon is a Fire-type Pokemon that does 20 damage plus 10 for each Pokemon in your discard pile, and if I'm playing a deck that's trying to throw Pokemon in the discard pile, I might as well take advantage of it. Not to mention that a heavy Flareon line will make your Virizion Genesect matchup much, much stronger very, very quickly, which is, of course, always a very, very good thing. So, that is good. That makes us happy. In terms of matchups, it's pretty good against Speed Lugia because they're generally using Lugia and Deoxys, and you've got type advantage over both of them. It can be good against fighting, although Landorus can be a pain with its water weakness, but you're certainly good against Lucario. Against things like Seismitoad, they're going to be KOing every turn because you've got low HP Pokemon, but you're going to be at the minimum really 2-hit KOing them, and once you get going you don't really need any trainers, so that's going to help. Against things like Yveltal, again, you've got type advantage, but again you've got these low HP Pokemon, and don't forget Pumpkaboo is weak to Dark, so a non-EX Yveltal is going to KO that very, very quickly for a single energy. So, and the other thing is, it can basically be any deck that doesn't have a fast start. If I start Joltik or Pumpkaboo of course will need a Dimension Valley, I just need a Battle Compressor and a DCE to hit for 60 damage. Over and over again, and most, Virizion Genesect needs more than that. Yveltal generally needs a little bit more than that, unless you're attacking with non-EX Yveltal. Donphan is going to need more than that, and it can have I've actually played both sides of this matchup. It can have a pretty good Donphan list, because Donphan's going to be trying to block with things like Trevenant and Sigilyph, and you can run through them very quickly with your non-EX Pokemon. You're basically trading 1 for 2, 1 for 1, but you can generally be attacking a little bit faster, although that Donphan will keep taking prizes unless you can Lysandre up and kill it. So that's basically the good things about the deck. There are, however, a multitude, because I know I haven't really given a very long list of good things about the deck. Let me explain myself. Essentially, that's what the deck is. It hits hard, it hits fast, it hits type advantage against a multitude of decks, and it can work quite nicely. But that's basically all it does. Subject, of course, to whatever you want to pair it with. Now, because I'm pairing it with Flareon, I've also got type advantage over Virizion Genesect, which means, in terms of my type advantage easier matchups, I've got Yveltal, and I've got Virizion Genesect, and I've got Plasmadex. And I've already told about Donphan, so the matchups can look quite good. But there are a multitude of problems, and here are other things you can do. By the way, one last little note before I start going through the problems. If you're running it, you don't need any particular kind of energy. You can essentially run Pumpkaboo and Joltik are going to be your attackers here, really. They both run off colourless energy, as does Flareon. So you can put, if you're really worried about things like Landorus and Pyroar, for instance, because you're running all basic Pokemon, we'll stick a couple Vaporeon in there. You're going to have the space to do so. So you can tech this out to do bad matchups. So any matchup I say is a bad matchup, that is of course assuming that you're not dedicating. I'm dedicating quite a bit of space to my Flareon Espeon line. You could take that out and put something else instead to cover whatever the matchup you're worried about. And that's quite important. Biggest problem, low HP Pokemon. I'm attacking with a 30 HP and a 60 HP Pokemon, which means even though I'm taking non-EX prizes every turn and EX prizes every other turn, my opponent doesn't need much of a setup to take prizes. Against our Virizion Genesect, essentially they need a Virizion, and they're taking a prize every turn. They will need a Muscle Band to kill Pumpkaboo, but that's it. By the time Genesect comes out, they're taking a prize every turn, and they're spreading bench damage, and it's only going to take 2 turns of bench damage to take down a Joltik. That's 3 prizes in 2 turns. And if you're 2-hit KOing that Genesect, that's 2 prizes in 2 turns. So it can work out badly there. So if you have in the same way you can punish a bad start, if you have a bad start, and this is why consistency really is king with this deck, if you have a bad start, you are going to fall behind very, very quickly. And even though you can be trading 2 for 1 when you get enough Pokemon in the discard pile, or if you're able to take advantage of the type differential, you're still... you're going to be on the back foot pretty darn quickly. So that's something that you really do need to worry about here. Another problem is you're relying on double colourless energy, and this is very, very dangerous. Because if you're relying too heavily on double colourless energy, first of all, Enhanced Hammer comes in, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is a bad thing. And secondly, what if you don't draw into your DCE? You essentially need to have a turn or two where you get down a Psychic Energy where you don't need to attack. So let's say turn 1 I get an energy down on Pumpkaboo. Turn 2 I get a Joltik DCE attacking. Turn 3 I get a DCE on Pumpkaboo, and then there's a turn, because Joltik's gone down, and essentially I get a couple turns where I'm just able to put a Psychic Energy on the board, so then there are some turns where I can attack with just a Psychic, rather than having to have a DCE every turn. I've played maybe 20 or 30 games with this deck at this stage. I've played a lot of games with it, and a lot of games, my opponent either can't keep up taking a KO every turn, or I'm able to take a turn or two to lay down a Psychic Energy, and I'm playing it with Psychic, of course, it's whatever energy you play, and I can have a turn or two where I can lay an energy on the bench, and I don't need to attack with said energy, and that allows me to have attackers during the game. Now, I personally play Sigilif in my deck for this exact reason. I'll often put a Sigilif up to try and buy a turn, to buy an extra energy attachment. Because the fact of the matter is, if you can't keep up an attack every turn, you will end up losing quite quickly. Now, they are the 2 biggest problems with the deck. Now, other people might say otherwise, but as far as I'm concerned, they're the 2 biggest problems. Keeping the stream of energy going so that you can have an attacker every turn, and the fact that your opponent is taking a prize every turn because your Pokemon are so low HP. They're the things you really need to worry about. Now, some people have suggested playing Mewtwo or Celebi in a deck Mew or Celebi in a deck like this. And the theory holds. Let's say I put a Gourgeist up, I can run, for instance, Grass Energy, and that Gourgeist potentially has 200 HP, which kind of solves your problem. Celebi EX has the ability which allows you to use your previous evolution's attacks, and that means that you've essentially got a 200 HP Gourgeist, which is doing this attack for a double colourless energy. That sounds good. Here is why I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole. You are introducing a whole host of problems. Immediately, you are now really susceptible to ability lock. Because if abilities come up, if ability lock comes up, Gourgeist doesn't have 200 HP, and I said this on the podcast last week, but essentially, if my Gourgeist has 120 damage on it, and my opponent locks abilities, my HP goes down to 100, and he's KO'd instantly, in the middle of my opponent's turn, and then they get to keep attacking. So, that's a problem. So, that's not good. As a side note, though, Wobbuffet does not shut off the ability, because remember, Wobbuffet only shuts off abilities of non-psychic Pokemon, and Gourgeist is a psychic. But Celebi also revolves around an ability. So all of a sudden, if my opponent plays down a Garbodor with a tool, I don't have Celebi's ability anymore, so I can't use a Night March attack. Same thing with Mew. If my opponent gets rid of the Joltix or Pumpkaboos on my bench, then I've got a Mew sitting there that can't attack. And yes, we know it can copy, your opponent's attacks if you've got the correct energy. This isn't Mega Gengar EX. Mew needs the correct energy to copy attacks, and you may not have that. But there is a bigger problem here. One of the big things about Night March, which is really, really good, is the fact that the prize trade. The low HP Pokemon suck, and it means your opponent's taking a prize pretty much every turn, but he's only ever taking a prize. As soon as I put down a Celebi or a Mew, brilliant, I've got 100 HP or less Pokemon EX, and my opponent can Lysandra up and KO for easy prizes. Or worse, I'm attacking with it. Now, I played a Night March deck the other day, and I have beaten every Night March deck I have played with whatever deck I've used, if they play Mew. I've yet to play one that's got Celebi, but every time I play a Night March deck with Mew, I win. And the reason is, it doesn't matter what I'm using, sooner or later I'm able to turn the prize trade in my favour. I was using a speed Lugia list online last night, and I played against a Night March deck, and it was back and forth, and of course he had the Pumpkaboo for my Deoxys, and he had the Joltik for my Lugia, so I had to get quite creative. Now, as it turned out, and I'm not telling you my exact list, it's a bit of a secret for now, if you've looked at my YouTube channel, you might be able to work out the Pokemon I'm talking about. There was a Pokemon in my list that I should have used earlier that would have made the matchup so much easier. I'll know for next time. But the way I ended up winning that game was using Lugia to KO Mews. Essentially what happened was, I used Lugia to KO a Mew for free prizes, then I used Deoxys for doing 30 damage, because Deoxys can do 30 damage with just a Psychic Energy attached if Dimensional Valley is in play, as my Night March opponent had in play, to take out a couple of Joltics and won a very close game. If my opponent just used Joltik and Pumpkaboo, I would have lost that game. But it was the ability to take free prizes in one turn with Lugia that won it. And that's what happened and the same happened when I played against Night March with Donphan. I was able to catch up a Mew and kill it, and that's what turned the prize trade in my favour. We were trading 1 for 1, and then I used Lysandra to bring up a Mew and kill it. That's why I don't think Celebi or Mew are good fits in Night March. I really, really don't. The other thing I've heard people say is, Lysandra's last resort. Lysandra's last resort is going to absolutely destroy Night March. Really? This comes down to my annoyance with people. It's called Pheromone. You look at a card, you make a decision, and kind of like in the NFL this year, how nobody gives the Chiefs much credit, even though they're actually and I hate the Chiefs as a Chargers fan, but the Chiefs are actually playing really well and doing really well, but everyone thought at the start of the season that the Chiefs were going to suck, so nobody wants to talk about the Chiefs being quite good this season, because everyone had it in their mind before the season they were going to suck. That's kind of what happens with these cards. Everyone just goes, well, Night March relies on having Pokemon in the discard pile. Lysandra's trump card puts all the Pokemon and everything back into each player's deck, so Night March is going to be rubbish. I have lost games with Night March for the reasons I've told you, being run out of energy and low HP Pokemon. And they are the only two, aside for drawing dead, which is going to happen occasionally, they are the only two reasons I've lost with Night March. They are the two biggest weaknesses. I have played against decks with Night March that have played Lysandra's trump card. I have yet to lose to a deck that plays Lysandra's trump card. And here's why. Firstly, I set up a non-Night March attacker, probably something like Espeon, to tide me over in the chance that that happens. And secondly, I have gone for a fast, consistent Night March deck. Okay, my opponent might be shuffling 7 Night March Pokemon into my deck. They're also shuffling all of my supporters into my deck, all of my bicycles into my deck, all of my battle compressors into my deck. And then I can get these Pokemon back into the discard pile at the same speed I got them into my discard pile the first time. And the prize traders usually give me enough of a lead. Now, I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination that I can never lose to Lysandra's trump card. That would be ridiculous. You know, think of the situation where I don't have a non-Night March attacker set up. My opponent plays Lysandra's trump card with a bench full of good attackers. I'm not able to draw into something like a Battle Compressor or Juniper into one or whatever. And yeah, in that situation, then I could easily lose. It is an annoyance. But I'd much rather they played Lysandra's trump card than they played Enhanced Hammer against me. I really would. Because in games where I can't get a random basic energy on the field, I try and put down a double colourless so that I've got an attacker built up so that I can take 2 turns to attach manually. I can't really afford a turn without manually attaching. So I'm putting a DCE down to try and get ahead in my energy drops. My opponent gets rid of that DCE with Enhanced Hammer. Not only am I behind in my energy drops now, but I don't have one of my 4 DCE that I really need. The other thing is, Lissandra's Trump card can actually help you, because it puts your DCEs back into your deck, so it can actually be an advantage if you can get your Pokemon back into the discard pile quickly enough, which of course is a big if. You know, one of the decks which is really going to want to play Lissandra's Trump card is going to be Virizion Genesect to put all of their grass energy back into their deck for their, you know, late game energy attachments. And quite frankly, if I'm playing against that with Night March, I'm going to have Flareon, and I'm going to need, you know, a Silver Bangle and 4 Pokemon in the discard pile. I should be able to do that, especially with a deck full of Battle Compressors. So again, that's just from my testing. Maybe over time I'll be borne out. They're my thoughts on Night March. The decks it's good against, the decks it's not good against, the major problems, and the fact that you really shouldn't play EXs in that deck. Same thing with Celebi. The boosting consistency you get from Celebi EX being able to get you a supporter card is not worth the dip in prize trade that you are going to end up coming up against by having a low HP Celebi on the bench. Do not fall for it, ladies and gentlemen. Boom. Alright. Couple of other quick notes before we get going. Just things I found out about Phantom Forces before I leave you today. Battle Compressor is awesome. More about this on my top 10 cards from Phantom Forces, but it's not just for getting cards in your discard pile. What I find with Night March is, by the time I've played 2 Battle Compressor, I've discarded every Night March Pokemon I need to. But I end up playing Battle Compressor and getting rid of things like Ultra Ball and N that I'm not going to want late game when I'm ahead in the prize trade. To essentially, I mean, the theory is, the less bad cards I've got in my deck that I don't want to draw, the higher my statistical probability of drawing into a card that I do want to draw. If I've got 2 Ns and 2 Colrus in my deck, and I've got a deck of 12 cards, I've basically got a 1 in 6 chance of drawing a Colrus, and a 1 in 6 chance of drawing an N. If I use Battle Compressor to get rid of those 2 Ns, I've then got a 0 chance of drawing an N, but my chance of drawing a Colrus has now gone from a 1 in 6 chance, 2 in 12, to a 1 in 5 chance, 2 in 10. And I can actually increase that probability further by discarding a 3rd card with Battle Compressor. Late game, Battle Compressor is really good for consistency. People have for years and years and years, as long as they've been playing the game, doing things like playing Juniper or Ultra Ball just to discard dead cards they don't want to draw into at a later date. You know, or searching for a Pokemon that they don't actually want, so it's not in their deck, so they can't top deck it the following turn. These are things people have been doing for a long time. It's one of the advanced kind of playstyles which basically leads to upping your chance of drawing into what you want, and Battle Compressor helps with that. It's something I've been absolutely digging. Enhanced Hammer is immense in this format. Donphan pretty much entirely relies on it. The fighting decks are much worse without special energy. By relies on it, I mean relies on special energy. If Donphan is only allowed to use basic fighting, it is a much worse deck. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that generally a lot of the Donphan lists nowadays, look at Alex Hill's list, which was pre-Enhanced Hammer, that I put up on my YouTube channel, PTCGRadio on YouTube. He's only playing 3 basic fighting. Not a problem when Enhanced Hammer isn't in the format. Big problem when it is. Evil Tau decks love conserving their DCE. Plasma decks, Aromatist decks. Enhanced Hammer is awesome. And it's often going to be the 61st card in your deck. You're not going to have room, but if you can find room to put it in your deck, ladies and gentlemen, I would heartily recommend that you do. It is going to be a beast of a card. And speaking of decks which have come about due to the new rotation, bad news, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think that these metal decks are going to be good enough. I think they're a step behind. I think for the time being they're a little bit too slow. And I don't think they've got good enough attackers yet. I think Dialga EX is the best of the lot, but having to use 4 energy to attack and then relying on the Bronzong, there's a lot of Garbodor out there at the moment, which is bad for a deck which relies on abilities. and it's going to have a horrific Pyro matchup. They don't even need to use special energy, so Aegislash isn't exactly going to be great against them. They can just use basic fire. And I mean, Pyro's going to run through you. It's not good against Garbodor, so you've already got, Garbodor decks are a very bad matchup. Pyro's pretty much an auto loss. Seismitoad Garbodor is going to completely screw you over by the time they start playing Laser, and you're not able to get out of the active, and you're not able to use Bronzong to attach extra energy when you go down, etc, etc, etc. Heck, it could even have a really bad Donphan matchup. If Donphan flicks into Wobbuffet, you're not going to be able to use Bronzong. So, the matchups aren't there. And even getting around all the matchups, it's just a bit too slow. Donphan, on turn 2 of the game, is going to be looking to hit for around about 100 damage. With the 40 base damage and then the 20 for Muscle Band, 20 for Stadium and the 20 for the Strong Energy. It's going to be looking to do about 100 or maybe even 80 if you're a bit unlucky on turn 2. That's what they're looking to do. Seismitoad is going to be looking for 50 damage plus Trainer Lock and maybe a laser on turn 2 of the game. Yveltal is going to be looking to do 90 damage with Y-Cyclone on the second turn of the game. Virizion Genesect is going to be looking to do 50 damage and attached to a Genesect ready to get KOs on the following turn by the second turn of the game. By your second turn of the game, you're going to have some Bronzong set up, but you're probably not going to have enough energy on Aegislash or on Dialga to actually do much of anything. It's really turn 3 that deck's going to get going, and even then you're not doing all that much damage unless you've had a good start. I'm not saying this deck will never be good, but I'm saying at the moment it's not great. A lot of hype around Gengar, but not that many people seem to be taking it too seriously at the moment, and I've yet to see a good Manectric list. There must be one out there. Somebody must be working on a killer Manectric list. Speaking of which, email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk if you think you've got one. I'd love to have a look at it. Yeah, that's a bit cheeky, but you never know. I might be able to give you a bit of feedback. And even if not, I'm cheeky. I'll go with that. But it's not the deck at the moment which I'm seeing people having this amazing list for. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will pretty much do it for this week. I've told you about the new Primal Pokémon. I've told you everything I know about Nightmare. Well, not everything, but a lot of stuff. Make sure, and I've gone through a couple other notes from Phantom Forces. By the way, Versus Seeker, good. Really good. I thought I'd prefer it over Palpad, and from my testing, I'm still a big fan of it over Palpad. Yeah, Palpad will recycle 2 supporters, but you've got to draw into them. I need a Lysandra, I draw a VS Seeker, that's a Lysandra. I draw a Palpad, well, I can put the Lysandra back into my deck, but then I'm going to have to play a supporter to draw into them, and then if I draw into them, I'm not going to be able to play them, because I've already played a supporter, and I'm not Jake Wolvin, so I can't play 2 supporters in one turn. That's right, Jake, it happened a long time ago, and I'm still bringing it up now. You're welcome, and I love you. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening. As always, make sure you check out my YouTube channel on YouTube, just PTCG Radio. You can tweet me at the Wassy, email me at ptcgradio@hotmail.co.uk. Have a lovely week. Until next week, look after yourselves, and I shall see you all in a week's time. Thank you very much for listening. You've been listening to PTCG Radio.